Our customers compete with anyone when it comes to hyperscale and efficient hardware.
How do you lead that?
Number one reason a company fails is they don't get market transitions.
Absolutely. I think the industry is going through a tremendous transformation.
Hey Mike, how are you?
I'm great, Steve. Good to see you again.
Really good to see you again. Let's talk about NFV and the virtualization market for service providers. It's still super busy, right? Pretty frothy, a lot of players. How are you differentiating Overture in that market?
Yeah, when we started last year at this time, I told folks what I was most concerned about was that in 2015, my biggest fear was everybody was starting to sound like us, right? So the question was, how are we going to differentiate ourselves in 15? And yeah, and it took some time, but as I got through middle of the year and I started looking at why customers were talking to us and what they were asking about and what they were interested in, I came up with 4 things that seemed to be getting the attention. And it's not that other players didn't have 1 or 2 of these things, but I thought unique to us were 4 categories. One was we had a multi-vendor orchestrator, right? And a lot of folks have orchestrators, but when you got down to it and really looked at what we had started and how we designed ours, it was truly multi-vendor. The second thing we did is we virtualized our own products. So we came out with a VNF for carrier Ethernet. So we were the folks sitting there saying, this is the way the world is going. And if you look at some of the other players in our space, they have virtualized some things, and they'll virtualize the router or they'll virtualize the Ethernet. But if you're a router vendor, they say, I'll virtualize this, but they'll have some kind of processor or some kind of FPGA and for that, right? So to me, we did the pure play, and I think you talked to Prayson, he may have chatted about that.
Absolutely.
We've been all over that since
and wrote about it, exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
So the third point is we came out with a pure server. In fact, we've had to educate our own folks because the tendency was to lead with, we've got another NID. And in fact, a lot of our customers just assume that's what it is. And we have to actually step back and say, this is not a NID. It is a pure play server. There are no purpose-built NPU, FPGAs in it. And what that does for customers is it gives them choice. Because we actually come in and say, you actually don't need this hardware from us. You can go use a pure server, and all this software that we've been talking about operates in that environment. So they get the ultimate choice. And then the fourth thing, which actually I was talking to 2 customers in the last month, and when we put up the slide that shows the number of VNFs that we've onboarded into our orchestrator, which I think we're up to about 30 when you count vendors plus open source, that's more than anybody has seen. I had a very, very large tier 1 say, that's your money slide. Because you talk about choice, I'm giving them the ultimate choice. So folks have got pieces of that story. To me, it feels like we're one of the few that has all 4 of those. So that is how we differentiated ourselves in 15.
But you're also giving your customers quite a lot of flexibility in terms of what type of server it runs on with Atom versus Xeon and things like that. There's a whole range. I mean, that must be a benefit as well, right?
So we started with the Atom processor. We're moving towards Xeon. And again, you get ultimate choice in terms of you want the vendor, right? So yes, we've made the right choices ourselves, I think, because we made some of these 2-3 years ago, and those have seemed to benefit us well.
Right. I mean, it sounds to me like if you get into the consideration funnel with a service provider, you're going to do really well there, right? But it must be challenging to get into consideration. Is that why you chose to do this test with light reading recently?
Yeah, you're talking about the EANTC test.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's exactly why. What we were finding, actually, though, the opposite. The strategy from the beginning was if we could take the rich set of customers that Overture already had and figure out how to focus on them first and transition them to where the world was going around cloud, virtualization, and software-driven, we would be immensely successful. So getting into some of the customers, the existing customer, off of our carrier Ethernet skills, I wouldn't say it wasn't hard, but we had the entree. And so that's where our focus is. What we found when we got into those guys was, because we just assumed the world was doing better than we thought. And when we got into head-to-head testing, we were getting the benefit of the results.
Right.
And we were getting compared to some much, much bigger players and doing well. So when the idea came up, and I think it was probably you that came up with this to get us in there,
I have about one a year, so that was probably it.
We jumped all over it, Steve.
Yeah.
And the tests proved themselves out. So
Absolutely. I mean, you've done fantastically well, and I do think it really sets you apart into a very small group of companies who have actually been prepared to say, hey, you know what? Test it. Go ahead. Put it through its paces.
Well, and we're finding that, we're finding it from the test results, but we've seen that reaction from multiple very large tier ones who are, in fact, come in skeptical.
Right.
And then walk out and say, that's much better than we thought.
Yeah. So, Mike, there's still obviously quite a lot of fear and concern from service providers over virtualization. It is such an incredibly disruptive shift. What do you think their main anxiety is at the moment? Is it interoperability or performance, security?
Yeah, think about just those examples, and a lot of times people start with the technology. If you actually listen to, and I think it was one very large tier one at a recent conference say, people. In fact, finding the skills, right? So this stuff is hard. I mean, we've been at it 3 years. I think one of our advantages is our people have gotten up to speed, and I wouldn't say quickly, 2 to 3 years. It's taken a bunch of time, and these are hard issues. So if you listen to some of the tier one CTOs that are out there, you're going to hear that, I think, time and time again. Finding the people to execute this stuff, it's not easy.
Right.
Then you get to, performance, security, those are all real issues as well. But we would suggest those are not things that you can't overcome.
Right.
And
what is the skill set that people need to look for in their employees now to deploy virtualization successfully? I know it's a big question.
No, it's interesting. Well, one, it's if you think about what's happening between the IT space and the traditional comm space coming together. So I'm just thinking as I speak about some of the customers, what they're doing to cross-pollinate from those types of organizations, taking people from the traditional data center IT space, getting them more skill set in the telecom space and vice versa. And if you can find those people or cultivate that talent, I think you're going to go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a role for training here and for upskilling existing workforces, right?
Sure.
I mean, I imagine you've got a lot of your customers who are asking for help on that front. You know, what should we do? Does that suck a lot of the energy out of your day, helping customers like that and being consultative in that way?
The answer is yes. And now that people are aware that we have this skill, I'm just thinking in the last month, 3 customers I was in the front of, and our customers are getting smarter, Steve, which is actually a benefit to us. Because once people have the ability to get at least a little bit more depth, this is where we actually do shine. And so, I would say the skill set is really important. Customers are doing more and more to get their folks trained, and honestly, they're out there trying to pull from other organizations, even like ours, to go. We had a very large tier one MSO pull one of our better people. You know what? We were happy for them, but at the end of the day, because it was a big company, and they're going to go utilize that skill. But I think right now it's a little bit of a war out there.
Absolutely.
In terms of finding the right folks.
Well, let's talk about the war in particular on the equipment manufacturer side. We heard a lot about how the enterprise companies were going to sweep into the telecom space with their experience of cloud. You know, that hasn't really happened actually in 2015. It doesn't feel like it's really started to happen in 2016 yet. Do you think it's going to take a while before those guys get rolling?
Well, I would say to you, it's not because they haven't tried.
Right. No, I agree with you.
So I've seen some of the very large IT players who actually formed or had whole organizations focused on the communication service provider space. I mean, some of those companies are deriving billions of dollars of revenue streams from them from the traditional IT side.
Right.
But us folks that have been in the communication service provider space for quite a while understand this is a different beast, right? Number one, for them, the network is the business, right? So you find that in this space, those even senior folks in these large communication service providers are pretty savvy, at least on the traditional technology. And I am finding in the last 12 months, they're getting more savvy. I mean, they're talking to us about things like NFV and OpenStack, and so the conversations are getting broader and deeper when you go down in their organizations. So, so I think some of those IT players may have underestimated, the challenge with this customer base.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to just in the same way that you said that, skill set is important. That's a people thing. I mean, people and relationships are what drives telecom more even than technology or price.
Yep.
And Overture's reputation is as a service provider, which is what you want as well.
Right.
I tell you, the other reputation which you've acquired very quickly recently is as an enabler of virtual CPE implementations. Is that something you're happy with, or is there a lot more to what you're doing than just that? Is virtual CPE does that just happen to be the hottest opportunity right now for service?
Yeah, I'm not crazy about the term because it still somewhat reeks of the old way.
Okay.
But yes, it's virtual CPE, but we like to distinguish very specific use cases within that. But it is the hot use case. You'll also hear, and I guess they are somewhat distinguishable. You're starting to hear a lot about SD-WAN, right? So when I think about what those are, I do think it's certainly helpful to us.
Yeah.
When we go in and talk to customers, though, I want to ensure that we look at this more holistically.
Right.
Right. So to me, virtual CPE does talk about the challenge at the edge, and we do address that with some of the solutions I chatted with you earlier in terms of whether it's our server or somebody else's server, coupled with our VNF and the VNFs we've onboarded. But the real important and tough part is, if you're going to put 7 or 8 of those servers out there, that's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
You don't need a whole lot of automation.
Yeah.
You start getting to where we have a customer right now who started out with 50, going to 100. You start getting up to a couple of hundred of these things, and all of a sudden, those virtual CPE aren't all vanilla anymore.
Right.
Like it's not just these 2 VNFs, but now I've got multiple different personalities, and I've got to manage those and the instances of those. This is going to get pretty complicated pretty quickly. So that's the piece I think that customers, when we talk to them, they may ask us, tell us about this, but we always come back to the architecture and the broader challenge that you're trying to solve with the total solution.
I tell you, I mean, it's the beginning of the year, and the last couple of years, 14 and 15, felt very frothy. There was a lot of hype around NFV. I feel like 2016 is the year that NFV gets real in a lot of people's networks. In a sense, you're already in the real world, right? You've already got customers, you've just done these tests. You feel good about 2016? Do you feel like there's going to be some good customer wins for you this year?
Yeah, I do. It's interesting you use the term NFV gets real. That was actually our theme last year.
Okay.
And
you did it, right? So that was good.
Well, here's what I'd say. We absolutely, that was our mantra. That's the reason why we went into ENTC, because we wanted to prove to the world that, hey, you can do this.
Right.
So here's what I would say about 2016, because not a lot of people are making money on this right now, right? I mean, to the point, especially this customer base, they're pulling on your intellectual property. But here's the shift that I do see. And we've already got a specific example of that with one customer. People in 2016 seem to be willing to move those trials from my dime to their dime. So, in fact, we have one customer in particular at the end of the year. We didn't get the order yet, but I'm pretty confident it's coming. And it's not going to be a mass deployment, but it will be kicking the tires. Maybe we'll get a use case with one of their customers. I was just chatting. We're in for our global kickoff meeting this week. I was chatting with our team from the Middle East, and they were in with a customer last week, and they were talking about a trial, and in the end they said, so how much is this going to cost? Yeah. So I said, well, I hope we told them it's not for free.
Yeah, exactly.
So I actually think that's the next shift.
That's a huge transition.
Well, and to your point, we are starting to take orders for this stuff. Right? People aren't making the architectural decisions yet, but they are willing to do a use case or do a domain use case. And for me, a domain could be a geography, it could be a business, it could be a certain technology. Right. So and we've been saying this for a while. Yeah. But I think that's the shift you're going to see in 16.
Are you on plan? Are you where you thought you would be right now?
Well, we just finished our fiscal year for 15. We're just starting, so we're about 2 weeks in. We're on plan in the first 2 weeks. I would say to you that we're about where I thought we'd be. I did think starting last year it would have gone a little quicker, but I'm very optimistic about 16. Here's what I'd say: if I went back to 13, I'd say it's probably a year behind where I thought it would have been back in 2013.
Right.
But then as I think about some of your earlier comments about
Yeah.
this particular customer base and how hard it is to move them, and then the skill set problem
Yeah.
that they have,
Yeah.
it's
It
probably,
slows it down.
It's
Yeah.
probably where it belongs right now.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, a year ago, at a very senior level
Yeah.
in the communication service provider, there was still a little bit of skepticism about if this was going to happen.
Yeah, that's gone, right.
There, that is the big difference
Yeah.
from 15 into 16.
Yeah.
It's not about if anymore.
Right.
It's about when.
Yeah, and we did a survey. 97% of the respondents said they were going to deploy it in the next 5 years, and most of it was in the next 3 anyway.
And
so
how does that compare to like 2 years ago?
Oh, and I mean, it was like night and day.
Right,
you know.
exactly.
But I'll tell you an interesting thing, which I don't usually share, is light reading, on the business side is a great barometer of whether a market is real or not. And because, we make our business on the marketing side, that marketing spend precedes the reality of the market by about a year, and our revenues as a company doubled last year. So, so get ready, Mike.
No,
good times are coming.
No, we are, if you can't tell, we feel like we've been a thought leader in this space for quite a while.
Yeah.
The market's starting to come to us a little bit.
Yeah.
You made we are a small company. I think
Yeah.
you mentioned that in your conversation with Hauk. And we are small, but man, we are focused.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, from 2 years ago, where we were trying to find out where the next win was going to come from, to all of a sudden, we're having to step back and really prioritize where we're going to put our resources. They're both hard.
Right.
I will tell you that. We've made some hard decisions. We've made some trade-offs. But those are more fun, hard problems.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as we say, I think the overall theme is of it continuing to get real. And, I have to say, we've really enjoyed the partnership with you guys. We always learn something from Overture, and it's a very impressive story. If you think about it right now, there are only 2 companies that have actually stepped up and put their NFV solutions to the test, an independent public test, and one of them is Cisco, and the other one's Overture. So I give you a lot of credit for that, and congratulations.
Well, listen, thank you very much, and thanks for your support. You guys have been a good partner of ours as well.
Yeah, we're enjoying it.
Likewise.
Thanks. Mike. Cheers. Thank you.